I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. On Thursday, a group of progressive House Democrats called on President Biden to end Title 42. The CDC rule, which has been used to restrict migration through the southern border due to the COVID-19 pandemic, is a lightning rod issue. Republicans and many Senate Democrats in vulnerable 2022 races have called on Biden not to rescind the rule. Progressive Democrats, including Pramila Jayapal of Washington and Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, say the rule is unfair and anti-immigrant. Here's what they said in Washington.
All right, well, we'll just get started and hopefully our colleagues will be here momentarily. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I am very proud to be joined today by my colleagues, Congressmembers Garcia, Escobar, Chakowski, and I believe Pressley will be joining us as well, who are all fearless advocates and champions for a humane and just immigration system. And today, we are here together to reinforce our complete support. The application of Title 42 by the Trump administration was a cruel, racist, and counterproductive use of health policy to circumvent existing immigration law. It has harmed millions of people who are escaping war and poverty and famine. Title 42 should never have been put in place. The language of Title 42 is quite clear in its wording. It focuses on the danger of introduction of a communicable disease into the United States, but in fact, by the time Title 42 was put in place, COVID was already here, infecting, hospitalizing, and killing our people because the administration at that time, the Trump administration, was still fighting testing and mask mandates and social distancing, real public health measures in America that would have done far more to prevent the spread of the virus than the implementation of Title 42. Notably, Title 42 was not pushed by public health experts. In fact, public health experts wrote a long letter, dozens of them, saying that Title 42 should not have been put in place. It was rather instigated by Stephen Miller, Trump's chief anti-immigrant architect, who was hell-bent on eliminating all legal pathways into the United States. So the dubious public health rationale for Title 42 became an overt national immigration and border security strategy that essentially overturned current immigration law and takes away the legal rights enshrined in domestic and international law that migrants have to seek safety and asylum here in the United States. And during this time of great global crisis, I have to point out that Title 42 isn't just xenophobic, it's also hypocritical. We are all rightly concerned with providing safety to the tragic flow of refugees coming from Russia's illegal war on Ukraine. But let us be clear about the racism that exists when it comes to Black and brown people seeking asylum at our borders. Title 42 has disproportionately affected Black and brown people, and we must stop discriminating against people based on where they are coming from. We should be equally concerned with responding to migrants' need for safety and security. Laws in America is not Title 42. It is to pass humane and just immigration reforms that prioritize legal pathways for people to escape war, to be reunited with their families, and to seek a better life. And shame on anyone, Republican or, frankly, Democrat, who uses or buys into the use of immigrants as a political football at the same time that they, as do all of us, benefit from the labor and the contributions of undocumented and documented immigrants, of asylees, refugees, and others who have made this country home. I am a proud immigrant and one of only 24 naturalized citizens to serve in Congress. And my path to naturalization took me 17 years to citizenship. And before coming to Congress, I spent 2 decades as an immigrant rights activist. So I know firsthand how broken our so-called system is. People can't get in line because there simply isn't one. And I remind you again that the right to seek asylum at our borders is a legal right enshrined in international treaties that the United States is party to and in our own domestic law. Yes. So I urge all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle not to be afraid to lean into that, to clearly counter and contrast Democrats from the Republican xenophobia with our own embrace of the contributions and resilience of immigrants from all over the world and the continued fight for a fair and humane immigration system. That is who we are. Title 42 is a policy failure, plain and simple. It does nothing to prevent COVID from being spread, and by circumventing immigration law, it actually goes against the principles on which our country was founded. So ending it was the right decision. It was the only decision, and that is why today the Congressional Progressive Caucus will release a statement echoing that of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus that we will not support any legislative attempts to reinstate Title 42. And with that, let me turn it over now to a great colleague, the chair of the Immigration Task Force of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Congressman Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon. Once again, as an immigrant myself, along with my colleague from Washington, I want to reiterate to President Biden that we expect him to follow through on his promise to end Title 42 provisions by May 23rd. Lest we forget that the Trump administration's cruel anti-immigrant policies have left hundreds of children separated from their families, some permanently. It kept thousands more in overcrowded, unsanitary detention centers and terrorized immigrant communities like my neighborhood in Chicago, where I've lived for over 50 years. Let's be totally clear. This has never been about public health. Let me say it out loud. Title 42 needs to go. To my fellow Democrats who will be caving under political pressure, I want to reiterate. It would be a huge mistake for Democrats to shy away from dismantling this cruel plank of Trump's anti-immigrant agenda. Pandemic-related restrictions are being lifted across the country, yet Title 42 restrictions remain in place. But just last month, that double standard was created when Ukrainian refugees were granted exemption from Title 42 restrictions to enter the U.S. They should be allowed here. It's the right thing to do, but that should be the policy for all those seeking political asylum. So let me be clear. Those refugees should be admitted, but Black and Latino immigrants, including Haitians and Mexicans and Central Americans fleeing dire situations, must be treated with the same dignity. In fact, some immigrants in Latin America are coming from countries with higher vaccination rates than Ukraine, making any public health justification to keep Title 42 in place fall flat on its face. Instead of bowing to election year pressures and the anti-immigrant tactics of the right, Democrats must support President Biden and his commitment to end Title 42 restrictions as soon as possible. Immigrants deserve more than lip service. It's time to end Title 42 on our terms, not leaving it to the courts to do the politically difficult but morally right thing to do. No more delays, no more lip service. Let's end Title 42.
Right. Thank you so much, Congressman Garcia. And now, great pleasure to introduce my friend and a real champion for an inclusive southern border and an inclusive country, Congresswoman Veronica Escobar.
Thank you. Thank you, Pramila. Buenas tardes. Soy Verónica Escobar y yo represento la comunidad brillante y segura del Paso, Texas, en la mera frontera. I represent the incredible, vibrant community of El Paso, Texas, right on the U.S.-Mexico border. And two quick points that I would like to make. I think it's important always to remind our colleagues and the public that Title 42 is a CDC policy. I disagree with it. I don't think it promoted public health, but it is a policy under CDC that is linked to the pandemic. Anyone who is encouraging the president to usurp the CDC authority is going down a troubling policy path. In the future, would we encourage, or actually, would we have encouraged Donald Trump to go around CDC policy for vaccinations? I mean, we cannot politicize these decisions. And again, while I disagreed with Title 42 from the beginning, don't think it made us any safer, don't think it helped with the public health emergency that was the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic, we have to follow science. That's what Democrats have said all along, and we should not be encouraging the president to go around the CDC. The second point that I'd like to make is that when we talk about root causes of migration, one of the root causes that we fail to mention is Congress's inaction on immigration reform. My colleague and our chairwoman for the CPC mentioned the need for comprehensive immigration reform. It's been nearly 30 years, it's been nearly 3 decades since Congress reformed immigration laws. When that happened under the Clinton administration, it actually narrowed legal pathways and made more people deportable. We should have learned that narrowing legal pathways only increases irregular migration. And we've tried it the Republicans' way for decades. We've addressed migration not through congressional action, not through legislation. We have addressed migration at the border by hardening the border. So let me ask you, hundreds of miles of wall in, 2.5 years of Title 42 in, has migration been deterred? Mitigated? Has it ended? No. In fact, we are seeing historic numbers. So the Republicans' strategy is a failure. It is time for Congress to do its job. But let me tell you why our Republican colleagues don't want to do their job, why they won't work with us or vote for any of the bills that we have brought forward in the House. It's because the status quo works for them. Title 42 especially works for them. When they announce the numbers of encounters at the border, just remember, those numbers include what are called recidivists, individuals that make multiple attempts. So there have been reports of migrants making dozens of attempts. Does that represent dozens of people? In their data, it does. In reality, it does not. So they love Title 42. It inflates the numbers and helps them push this xenophobic rage machine that they believe will help them get elected and reelected. If they truly wanted to address what's happening at the border, let's look at the root cause that we can control today: passing immigration reform. So I want you all to ask them why they haven't done that. One more quick moment in history that I want to share with you all. The last opportunity we had to pass some immigration reform was in 2013. Almost 10 years ago, the Senate, on a bipartisan basis, passed comprehensive immigration reform that included records amounts of funding for border security. So the Republicans got millions of dollars more in border security than they dreamed of. In fact, one Republican senator said it was overkill, and they got it done in the Senate. What stopped it in the House? It was the Tea Party Republicans. Some of the same people who are still in Congress today and who are the same people pointing the finger at Democrats and at President Biden. If it weren't so tragic, it would be laughable, but it is tragic. Because again, they have Americans, they're feeding Americans xenophobia and really a steady diet of hate. Congresswoman Jayapal and I just came from a House Judiciary Committee hearing with Secretary Mayorkas. All you have to do is watch that, and all that the Republicans are doing now is basically acting and preparing not to solve problems if they take the majority, but to impeach Secretary Mayorkas. That's it. That's all they want to do, because it will keep Americans fed on a steady diet of hate. We are here to say that we are the solutions party. We are the party that wants to address the issues in a way that maintains the dignity of everybody at the border: migrants, law enforcement, and great communities like mine. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you so much, Congresswoman Escobar. And now I'd like to invite up a dear friend of immigrants for decades now, Congresswoman Jan Chakowski from Illinois.
Thank
Thank you. So Title 42 is a xenophobic and racist relic of the last administration. It was never justified as a public health measure, and senior CDC experts have objected to the policy from its inception. Epidemiologists and medical experts have reported and confirmed that Title IX has not done anything for public health and is not a responsible policy. And just this month, the CDC acknowledged that Title 42 policy is unnecessary and, quote, that numerous tools for disease prevention, mitigation, and treatment, unquote, that we already have available are those that should be used. We know that Republicans have been marching down the street for forever. Chewy and I in the city of Chicago, it's got to be, I think, almost 30 years that we've been doing this. But
and undermining our humanitarian obligations to asylum seekers in this country. Now, earlier this month, after years of relentless organizing and mobilizing, President Biden acted decisively. And we applaud the administration for heeding our calls to do away with this harmful policy. This long overdue action will save lives and move us closer to a more fair and effective asylum system for all. And again, we commend the administration for its action. And in case this seems like a Washington fight, as someone representing the third largest concentration of the Haitian diaspora and co-chair of the Haiti caucus, this is about people.
that's right.
This is about families. This is about the ability, quite literally, to live, to survive. This is about the fundamental human right to flee violence, whether you're fleeing Ukraine or Haiti. Our destinies are tied. And so when we talk about this contrast, really what we want is equitable outrage, equitable compassion, and an equitable federal policy response.
That's right.
The impact of these unjust policies, the separated families, the lives lost, the lives forever changed, can be felt deeply across my district, the Massachusetts 7th. We have a responsibility to change course and lead with compassion. We have a responsibility to treat asylum as the fundamental human right that it is, and I am pleased that the administration is making progress in rebuilding our asylum process. It is long past time that we treat all people with dignity, respect, humanity, and the compassion they deserve. Again, whether they are fleeing the violence and bloodshed in Ukraine or Haiti, we see you. We value your life, and you deserve the right to seek asylum. It is the right thing to do. It is the compassionate thing to do. And it is exactly, and I'll just end on this point, this is not benevolence or charity. This is a leadership response that is responsive to the needs of the broad and diverse coalition that elected this president,
That's right.
that delivered him to the White House. So I stand proudly in solidarity with the organizers and members of Congress who brought us together today to continue this work.
Thank you so much. So I also want to just thank all of the activists that are with us today and millions more around the country that have been working on this issue for so long. And I think we have a minute or two for any questions. Please, please.
Quería nada más preguntar lo que le pregunté acá. ¿Cuál es su reacción a las palabras del presidente hoy, que están haciendo noticia, cuando él dice que si el juez le ordena que debe mantener título 42, él está dispuesto a acatar esa orden?
Bueno, el presidente tiene que cumplir con la ley, si así lo dictamina algún magistrado que tiene la autorización pero el presidente también tiene la responsabilidad de cumplir con su palabra. Él tiene hasta el 23 de mayo para cumplir, para terminar con esta política por las razones que ya hemos elaborado. Sería lo correcto y creo que cumplir con la palabra es lo más importante. Esta política no tiene justificación, es tiempo de terminarla. Si las cortes hacen alguna intervención, eso puede cambiar la situación. Lo importante aquí es cumplir la promesa.
¿Qué opina de los congresistas de la frontera, en este caso, de su partido, Cuellar, González, que han dicho que el título 42 se debe mantener?
Desafortunadamente hay temores políticos, pero aquí es importante que seamos leales al principio de la justicia, a mantener la tradición de recibir a la gente que busca el asilo político, no obstante su país de origen. Gracias.
They have called votes, so we got to run, but thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.